Hello there. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. A quick trigger warning. We are going to be talking about some themes related to sexual assault in this video as it relates to broader context conversations about appropriate sex education for children and adolescents. If there's any concern that that might be triggering for you, make sure to take care of yourself. That is the most important, and maybe watch a different video instead. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Sonya My Psychology. If you're new here and you don't know me, I am a SMEGS therapist as well as a psychotherapist. I work in Pennsylvania. I'm also a content creator, so you might recognize me from TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. Yes, I post on Facebook now. A little bit of a disclaimer before I introduce my guest here. I usually create sex education content that's pretty direct, pretty unfiltered. Some may consider graphic, but today we're taking a slightly different approach. We're going to be talking about how to have age-appropriate conversations about sex, bodies, relationships with kids and adolescents. I believe this is a really important topic because I have a lot of clients that ask me about this, and I found that when I look on the internet, there's not that many resources that I find that are evidence-based, which is why I wanted to have this conversation. And it's really important because the way these conversations happen early on really shapes how children feel about consent, safety, and just wanting to ask these questions and have these conversations without shame is really important. So before we get into it, I want to let you know there will be resources below that are related to what we're talking about. There's also going to be some book recommendations. And by the way, if you're looking for a specific age group that you are, like, let's say you're a parent and you have a child of a certain age, there will be timestamps so you can jump ahead because it's going to be a bit of a all-encompassing long conversation. But all that aside, I'm really excited to be joined by Claire Appelmans. She is a sex educator in the Pacific Northwest. So she's going to be leading us through what's developmentally appropriate based on certain age ranges. And I'll be kind of guiding the conversation, maybe adding some of my perspectives as we go. And our goal today is to keep things clear, respectful, useful, so that parents, caregivers, educators feel more confident having these conversations with kids. So with that, let's dive in. And yeah, Claire, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So my name is Claire Appelmans. I use she, her pronouns, and I teach pre-K through 12 sex ed classes in person in the Pacific Northwest. And I also teach online and offer private consultations to teachers, parents, therapists, healthcare workers, anyone who's helping raise youth, raise adolescents. And I'm really excited to share. I have so much information. It's a long document that I'm going to be referencing today, and we will not get to everything today. So I just kind of want to say in general to any parent or caregiver watching today, it is totally normal to want to talk with your child, be they 3 years old or 13 years old, about these topics. And it is also totally normal to feel nervous about it, to not know what to say, to be worried that you might say too much too soon. You are in good company. I work with parents all the time who feel that way. And what we're going to try to do today is offer you some guidance. Like, if your child is in the 0 to 7 age range, consider talking with them about this, this, and this. But it is ultimately up to you when you share this information with your children, and how you share it. So we're going to offer ideas on how to do that, but we are not here to tell you, you got to say it at X age, at this time, in this way. Like, you get to say it in your own voice and in your own way. But we hope that with the resources that we share today and some of the language that we use, that we can make these conversations a little bit easier for you and for your family. So we're here to support you, even though it might be sometimes a little difficult to get these conversations started.
For sure.
All right, should we jump into our first age range?
Yes, let's jump in. And if I
Awesome.
have something I want to say, I'll just be like, all right, hold on, I want to talk about this. So, but
Perfect.
yeah,
Cool.
please, take the stage.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to start with what I call the early years, which is the 0 to 7 age range. And it is possible to begin this education and this support as early as your child is coming home from being born, at the hospital. Because what we want to do in this early year time frame is to start opening conversations between the people who are taking care of this child. So we want to have any parents, any co-parents, any babysitters, daycare teachers, grandparents who are in the picture, any person who is caring for your child. We want to have an open conversation with them about body boundaries, and about what type of touch touch is okay or not okay, when taking care of your child. So I'm going to go ahead and share 3 topics to talk about either directly with your child or with the caregivers in your child's world. So the first one is genital function and anatomy. For anyone who has an infant or a toddler, you have probably experienced your child either touching their own genitals, either asking a question about them, or poking or possibly even touching your own genitals. When children are born, they are not born with the social knowledge and understanding of the boundaries that we have in our society, where we are typically keeping genitals covered for the most part, and we are not touching other people's genitals without their permission, and there's specific boundaries and expectations for kids that they need to learn about from you. One of the most important things for kids to know about genitals is basically what they're called and what they do. And this can help them communicate if they have a question about their genitals, if their genitals are hurting, or if there's an issue with their genitals, like a body boundary is being broken. So it is okay to say to your young children, honestly, when you are wiping your your child's genitals, like during a diaper change, even if they're pre-verbal, they are still taking in information, and it's okay to say, hey, I'm going to wipe your vulva, or I'm going to wipe your penis or your scrotum, and start to use those type of terms with them as they're very young, because we want to give them the language to communicate with, and we also want to be accurate and specific so we can help them understand what all these different parts do.
Yeah, one thing I'll say
Go
real
for it.
quick.
Yeah,
I do find that really important, and I think that that's something that should be talked about more because I've noticed that a lot of people have been brought up with more shameful words
right.
for that area. So it's like the no-no area or something along those lines, or oh, down there, like these kind of like negative words for that area. So it sounds like what you're saying is regardless of how young, doesn't matter.
Correct.
Using correct terminology like vulva, vagina, penis, those things that I have to come up with euphemisms for on the internet, not
Exactly.
in parenting context.
Right. And if you are someone who has never said those words aloud or aren't used to saying those words aloud, either in front of your child or in front of other caregivers who are around when you are, for example, doing a diaper change or something, you can totally just practice. You can just say them over and over. A lot of these words hold a lot of I would say like energy or what is it,
Yeah.
like connotations or whatever. And
Yeah.
you get to have a little bit of influence over your relationship with the word, but you can literally just say there and sit there and say penis, vulva, testicles,
Clitoris.
vagina, clitoris, yeah,
Yeah.
labia, anus,
Yeah.
just over and over and over until the words don't hold as much intense fear
Clitoris.
or shame over them.
Hmm.
I literally
Yeah.
in some classes literally have everybody just say the words aloud
I
so they
love
can
that. I
just
think that's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, because people have a hard time with it. I think they called it like the penis game, like, oh, ha ha, we're saying the word.
Right.
Yeah, and people know if they watch my content, I usually call it a clitoris, the clitoris, which sounds like a dinosaur and it's kind of funny, but I only do that because of the moderation. If I had it my way, I would be saying clitoris left, right, center all the time, but thankfully I think it's kind of funny because it sounds like a dinosaur. It's like Clitoris Rex. So that's why I do that. Not because I want to, but I have to.
I know, I know.
Yeah.
It's tough out here in the work that we do
Yeah.
to be able to use the right terms when we're
Right.
talking.
Right. It's rough.
Okay, so we're gonna move from helping them understand what the function is and the names. Actually, let's just jump into function real quick. At this time, all genitals do for young kids is just to help them get rid of urine. There's no need to go into all the other things that genitals do until it becomes developmentally relevant. So this is going to be a theme as we go through these different age ranges, which is when is it developmentally relevant for them to know something? So if a child is touching their own genitals and they're hanging out in the living room and there's guests over, it's developmentally relevant for them to know, hey, we don't touch genitals in the presence of other people. That's something to do in private.
Right.
Or if they're asking about sex, in the grocery line at the grocery store, hey, sex is something that we're going to talk about in private. I'm glad you have a question about it, but it's not something that we can talk about everywhere.
Right.
So helping them understand this stuff will come up organically as I'm sure parents of young kids know, this stuff comes up organically all the time. And
Right.
sometimes it is going to be on the parents' shoulders or the responsibility of the parents to be the ones to bring up this information, and we'll help you kind of figure out when to do that. Okay. Wow, there's so much more to say about genitals, but we'll move on. Okay, so body boundaries. So this relates to consent, which was just what you were talking about earlier. So for young kids, it is actually is quite difficult to help young kids understand to like ask before touching another person, or if somebody is touching them, that they have the right to say no and to have that person stop touching them if they don't like it. Another important piece of information for kids to have is just where it is okay to touch people and where it is not okay to touch other people. This is one of those things I'd recommend not waiting until it comes up organically, but really coming forward with that information on your own and sharing here are the different places on someone's body that are private or that are not okay for someone else to touch, except in specific situations. And then you can share what those are. But we typically say in my field that people's mouths, butts, and genitals and chests are off limits. And it's a lot of information. And when your child is really young, you might just say, hey, genitals are off limits for touching. They're just a part of our body that is really personally for us and not for other people. And there's also bacteria and things in that area of our body that we just need to keep there and we don't want getting in other places. So please don't touch other people's genitals and please don't have other people touch yours. If that does happen, please come to me or come to this other person like an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, whoever your child has in their life that they trust.
Yeah,
And
I'm
I
sure
don't
it's
know if
okay
you,
too. Oh, sorry to interrupt.
oh, no, it's okay. Go ahead.
That's one of the most important things to outline is creating an environment of safety, and it's okay to come to me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And we want to avoid saying like you should or you must, because it can be most of the time when a child is experiencing some type of body boundary violation, like some type of sexual assault situation, in these, especially in these younger years, it is from somebody that the child loves, knows, and cares about and trusts, and oftentimes relies on for food, shelter, and care, general care. So we don't want to place this sense of obligation on a child because they can feel really conflicted about coming forward and saying, this person who I love and care about is touching me in a way that I have heard is not okay or makes me feel uncomfortable. But we want to open the door and just say, hey, if this does happen, I'm here to help. And I will be so happy and glad that you shared it with me, no matter who it was who was touching you, in a place that it's not okay to be touched.
Yeah, I agree with
So,
that. And something I talk about with clients a lot is the word should can be very shaming depending on the context. So I
yep,
try to keep that in the back of my mind because we tend to do that to ourselves. I should do this, I should do
right.
that. But in this context, I'm glad that you brought that up because it makes perfect sense. Like
Yeah, and if at any point during this whole thing when we're chatting, if someone's like, "Oh no, I said should," or like I said this thing I said it at the wrong time or I said it in the wrong way, it's really okay to do a do-over. One of the things that we talk about, generationally, we're in a different place than we were in previous generations. In previous generations, I'm sure someone watching has experienced this, where a caregiver sits down and says, okay, I'm going to have the talk with you and I'm going to tell you everything there is to know about sex and about genitals and babies. And I'm going to only say it this one time and never again. But now what we're recommending people do is they have very short conversations frequently. So a conversation in like literally 2 sentences. Hey, just a reminder, genitals are off limits for touching. Can you please go wash your hands? It's not okay to touch genitals in the living room. Done,
mhm.
and then coming back later and being like, hey, I saw you touching your genitals again after we talked about it. Can you
Mhm.
share with me why we were doing that? And let's chat about why it's important to not do that in the presence of other people. But like, it's so okay to come back and be like, hey, I think I remember telling you this thing and it was wrong and I'm really sorry and I want to do a little bit of a redo. Or you can even just share the new information if they're really young and just say, hey, by the way, whatever the new thing is that you want to share.
That's true. Yeah, it can be very reparative. And yeah,
Totally.
it makes sense in other contexts too, because we're not pu perfect as humans. We might get triggered and flooded and accidentally say the wrong thing. But yeah, the research shows clinically that when you go back and apologize and explain it, that's reparative for the relationship. So in this context,
Yeah.
is perfect.
Yeah, and something you just shared made me think, if there's anyone watching who is an adult survivor of child sexual abuse and who is feeling that this kind of conversation is triggering, overwhelming, something that you don't feel like you can do, you don't need to force yourself. It's okay if you don't feel comfortable doing that. It is important, however, that that child gets the information somehow. So you might want to think about, are there any other trusted adults in my life, like my best friend or their aunt or something like that, who can have that type of conversation with my child if I'm not in a place to do so? That's perfectly all right. And there's also an amazing community. It's called Consent Parenting, and it is run by Rosalia Rivera. And it is a group for people who want to support their children and educate their children, but do have some of these hangups of personal experience with child sexual assault and extra difficulties in understanding. How do I do this in a way that I feel okay, but still gets my child the information that they need?
And we'll put a link below for that one too in
Yes.
the resources.
Yeah. Okay. So the last little bit of information I'll share about this age group, and be, I just want everyone to know there's more than just this. Like these are our quick three, for you and your family to share with your child. But the last one that I think a lot of parents get really nervous about or feel a lot of hesitation around is defining what sex is, defining where babies come from. I hear oftentimes parents will say, okay, I'm just gonna wait as long as I can until my child has to know or until my child brings it up. And I would recommend you bring this information forward to them in a way that's developmentally relevant. Because sometimes the silence that we have around a certain topic, like if we're just sitting here not saying anything, that can actually send a message that this information is not okay to ask questions about, that this information is not okay for kids to know about, and there can be a lot of sense of fear around this topic for kids. Like if they hear it from a peer on the school bus on the way to school, or if they hear it from a cousin when they're hanging out in summer or whatever, like it can make the child feel like, oh no, I know something I'm not supposed to know. And they could actually be getting a lot of misinformation from those other sources. I don't know if you've ever like hung out with kids on the playground, but there's all sorts of misinformation that like goes around.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard some wild things where I'm like, that is not true from like, an 8-year-old or whatever.
Have an example?
Who's an example? Oh my God, there was
Yeah.
someone who was like, well, it's actually not even related to sexuality, but like someone was just like, oh yeah, banana slugs get this big, or even like they like held their arms all the way out, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, no, they don't. But anyway, there's a lot of
Yeah.
misinformation that can run in, peer-to-peer education with younger kids. So I would be when I ask parents, like, okay, who do you want your child to learn about what sex is from? Like, do you want them to learn it from their peers? Do you want them to learn it from the internet? Do you want them to learn it from you, from another trusted adult? And 99.999, percent of the time, the person goes, I want them to learn it from me. And I was like, if that's the case, it's time to say something instead of waiting and waiting and waiting, because that just allows more opportunities for your child to learn about it elsewhere.
Yeah, I've heard that some kids think, or I've heard, I don't remember who said it, but like sex is through the belly button.
Oh yeah.
The
Oh yeah.
buttons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of fun.
There's all sorts of misinformation about it for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna share a little like what this could sound like. And once again, as I said earlier, you get to say this in your own words, in your own time, in your own way. There are some really great books that will lead you right up to the moment of like, and this is what sex is, and then they don't say it, and so it will like set you up to say it. But you're still gonna need to be the one to say it. And this is another instance of if this feels intimidating or nerve-wracking to talk about, practice. Like you could practice on your own. You could practice with a partner or with friends, just saying, hey, I want to practice telling my child about what sex is because they need to know it at some point and I want them to hear it from me first. Can I just like practice saying it out loud and we like workshop it real quick before I go tell them? My two favorite books for this are What Makes a Baby, which is by Cory Silverberg, and then I have over here The Science of Babies. It's a board book, so it's like the thick kind, and they do a really great job of helping parents and caregivers have these conversations. You can just say, hey, remember how we have a friend who's pregnant, or if you are pregnant, or if someone in your family's pregnant, and there's a new sibling coming, like, hey, I want to share with you like where babies come from. Do you have any ideas? Like, and it's kind of fun. Like sometimes they'll come up with some really wild ideas, and it's really silly and fun to ask them. And
Nice.
like, oh my gosh, great idea, but that's not how it works. So babies come from a place called the uterus. Have you heard of that word before? They could say yes or no. Probably no. The uterus is a part of an organ in somebody's body, and it's where a baby can grow really big and then exit normally through the vagina, which is a part of the body where that connects the outside to the inside. And you can share with them, you have a vagina, or you don't have a vagina. This other person that you know has a vagina. Um, and you can say it's really quite amazing how babies get out of a person's body. I don't know if you know, but like babies are kind of big and the vagina is not super big, but it's really incredible how they can get out of there from out of the uterus and out into the world. And
Yeah.
you can say, do you have any ideas of how a baby gets in there? And then this is a chance for you to see, has my child been learning about this topic from anyone else, or are they ignorant and don't have any idea? It's like a little good check-in for yourself about where your child is at with their information. And
Right.
you can share, there's a lot of different ways that people make babies. One of the more common ways is for something called a sperm and an egg to meet inside of somebody's uterus or inside of somebody's body. And people with penises and testicles typically have sperm. And people with uteruses and vaginas and vulvas typically have eggs. And the way that the sperm and the egg meet, sometimes it goes like this. Somebody puts their penis inside of somebody else's vagina, and then the sperm leave the penis and go up into the uterus where they meet with the egg. And if the egg and the sperm meet, sometimes they grow into a baby and that baby is born. So it's a lot of information for a young person, and there's so many more details you can share. But the basics is basically just to say the sperm comes from this place and meets the egg via the penis going into the vagina, so that the sperm can get up into the uterus. Um, and you can leave it at that. You say, do you have any questions? Or how does it feel to learn about that? The kid might be like, weird, I don't care, I don't get it. And it's totally fine if they have that reaction. Most kids,
Mhm.
really young kids, don't care that all that much or think it's totally disgusting and think that they never want to do it ever in their whole
Yeah.
lives.
Ew. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and like that can be the first time, the first pass that you share that information. You can say, cool. Now, if you have any questions, you're welcome to come back and ask any of me, and we'll read a story about it a little bit later,
Yeah.
just to make sure
Just
you
to
remember it.
clarify,
Yeah.
too, this is appropriate to do when they, I guess, ask questions, and this could happen at a lot of different age ranges, right? I would imagine. Do we know the age range is the most prevalent to start happening? Like how old kids usually are when they start asking those questions?
So it's going to vary with each child depending on their like world. So if a child is 2 or 3 and their parent is pregnant with their sibling, that
Right.
becomes where did this baby come from? How did it is going to get out of there? Like that's when that becomes developmentally relevant for that kid. If there's nobody who's pregnant in the child's life, they might hear about like, oh, how are babies made from like their kids on like friends on the playground or something. Um, it really depends on like the child's like literally lived experience. So that is why it is important to like for parents to bring it up and to not wait for that moment, that organic moment. But organic moments are great moments to reiterate information like, hey, we were just hanging out with our, X, Y, or Z friend or the family member who's pregnant. Do you remember, we've talked about this before, but do you remember how babies get in there, like how babies are made? And it can be a great moment to be like, wow, my child remembers absolutely nothing that we talked about. I need to remind them. Kids need a lot of repetition with this information. So please do have that conversation multiple times to remind them. And something I want to share also from what we just talked about is it is also important to reiterate that this type of behavior is not for kids. So once you share it, okay, the penis goes into the vagina and then the sperm leaves the penis and goes blah, blah, blah. Like then it's an important time to say this is something that is not okay for kids to do. Kids' bodies are actually literally not ready to do that because kids don't have sperm yet. And it's just not, remember how we talked about genitals are off limits parts of the body? Like this is not something for you ever to do. If this is something that someone ever tries to do with you, you can say, stop, I don't want to do this, or you can go run away and find a grown up that you trust and that you care about who can help you in a situation like that. But it's not an activity for kids to do. That's a really great opportunity to set a boundary there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Okay. Cool. So I was going to share two more resources as a kind of wrap up, but do you have any other questions or thoughts about this age range?
So far, we were just talking about 0 to 6 or 7. Is
To
that right?
7. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it's ish, but yeah, the very young
Right.
years. Yeah.
A lot of what you just said, of course, applies to maybe over 6 and 7,
Yes.
depending on the context,
Oh yeah,
right?
like if there's a parent watching right now whose kid is 10 and they haven't had this conversation, you can totally have the conversation. And like it sounds a little different as you get older, because there's more
Right.
information to share at that point. Okay,
Yeah.
so I wanted to share two more resources. So we already mentioned the books about what makes a baby, how babies are made, that kind of thing. There's also two books about genitals, like their function, the names of genitals, and also boundaries around them. So there's two books all about vulvas and vaginas, and it's by Dorian Solot. And then there's all about penises, and both of these books do a really amazing job of covering a lot of information. So you don't have to remember it all. You just read the book. Um, I would recommend that that's a little bit like I don't think a 3-year-old's going to want to sit down for that book. It's there's just too many words in it. But you can always have them around the house. When your children are young, they can look through them. And you can use the diagrams to teach them about the different names and the different parts of genitals. And then as they get older, you can start to read parts of the book or the whole book with them. And then I also do have a self-paced course literally on how to talk about literally every single sexuality related topic with kids in the 0 to 7 age range. It's called The Early Years, and parents are able to purchase that for like a month or a year worth of access. So that's another resource for people who are like, wow, writing notes, who want to learn more. That's a good place to go.
Nice.
All right,
We'll link that below as well.
cool. Okay. Should we move on to puberty?
Yeah, we're going through changes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can't help but think of Big Mouth when I think of
I
that.
know. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Which is not good for kids, by the way, but it's
Oh
funny.
no. No, that is
Ah,
not a show for children at all.
no, no, no.
Awesome. Okay, so when kids are in the puberty years, so puberty can start as young as like 7.5, 8, which I know sounds really young. But typically kids are starting puberty if they have ovaries, a vagina, and a uterus. It's going to be starting more at like the 9, 10 age range. And if they have testicles and a penis, it's going to be starting more around the 11, 12 age range, 10, 11, 12. So it's a little bit later for kids with testicles. Okay, puberty. So there's so much to say about this age range. If you are somebody who has never talked with your kids about any of these topics, and all of a sudden you come at them and you're like, I have this book to read and all these topics I want to talk with you about, it can be a little much. So I recommend families who are trying to start these conversations when their children are slightly older, to say, hey, I just watched this YouTube video, or I just like read this book, or I was just talking with my friends about how important it is to talk with kids about bodies and boundaries and sexuality. And I feel like I haven't really shared much with you yet, but I just want you to know I would like to talk with you about these things. And I have information that I want to share with you, because I want to support you as you learn about these topics. You're probably going to hear about them from your friends. You probably are going to learn about them in school when they teach you about puberty this year, or you might even hear about them when you're online. And I just want you to know that I'm always available to answer any of your questions that you have about it. If there's ever any like fear or concern you have that you want to share with me, I'm totally happy to talk with you. And so you can literally just set the stage for your future conversations by acknowledging it's important to talk about these topics and acknowledging that's not something that you've done so far, but that you would like to do with them. So I feel like parents typically know what they want to say about puberty, or typically feel slightly more comfortable and confident talking about puberty changes, in part because many more people have had a class like in like fourth, fifth grade about puberty than they've had classes about sex ed. So people like have a little bit of a more like social comfort around this topic. I think what's really cool about puberty is there's like so many resources for families to literally take an online class together, which I'll recommend a class. Actually, I'll do it right now. There's a really cool organization called Sex Positive Families, and they have asynchronous and live puberty classes where you can be with your child. You need to have a trusted adult and the child together. And they're really fun and interactive. They have like really fun like props and things like that and activities and games for kids to play and questions to ask to be able to start those conversations. So if you're like, I need some support out here, I would recommend taking one of those classes with your kids.
Hmm.
And there's also a lot of different puberty products to get to help your child prepare for these changes. So puberty, one way to describe it is puberty is a time when a body is changing from a kid's body into a grown-up's body, and those changes are initiated by changes in hormones. And here are some of the changes that someone can expect. So you could say, like, since you have testicles, here are some of the changes you can expect. Or since you have ovaries and a uterus, here is what you could expect. There's tons of body changes. Whenever I list them out in my classes with kids, it can kind of like have this like heavy cloud of like, oh no, this is scary, or like this does not sound fun. So whenever chat with families about supporting their children who are in puberty or about to be in puberty, is just to say, if you can, find some like little ritual or like way to celebrate these changes, because it can feel a little scary of like, oh my God, I'm gonna like my skin's gonna go through some oiliness. I'm gonna smell worse. I'm gonna have hair growing everywhere. My like legs are gonna feel like growing pains. Like some of those changes can be a little bit not exciting. So I like to
Yeah,
like
and
pair
emotional
it
changes.
with, what'd you say?
Emotional changes too.
Totally. Yeah, emotional changes
Yeah.
are in there as well.
Yeah.
So what's important to know for kids as far as about puberty, are what are the changes they can expect for their own body, what changes affect other people's bodies, so they can have some empathy for their peers, and so it's not like a giant mystery what other people are going through. It can be really helpful to go through some of the different items that can help someone go through puberty. So those might be could be like a little heating pad if somebody menstruates or is going to menstruate, tampons, pads, menstrual cups. Could also be a sports cup if somebody is experiencing like genital like sensitivity and they don't want their genitals hurting because they're touching other things and they want to put a sports cup on, that's fine. There can be deodorant, shampoo, the pimple patches. You can also have like razors or buzzers and shaving cream to help your child learn how to shave if they're having either facial hair growth or hair growth in other parts of their body. There's a lot of different puberty products to get kids. One other thing is helping kids with the emotional side, and actually we might rely on you, Dr. Sonya, for this one. But making
Yeah.
sure they know what are some appropriate ways for them to express emotion and what are some inappropriate ways. Like not
Hmm.
okay to punch a hole in the wall, totally fine to punch a pillow.
Yeah.
Or not okay to scream and rant online to every single person they know. Totally fine to call a friend and be like, I'm so mad or I'm so frustrated right now.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
exactly.
want to share any other strategies that work for you
Oh
and your
yeah,
clients.
absolutely. Of course, the idea that emotions are there for a reason, serving a function. It's okay to be angry. Validating that it's okay to be angry is what you do with the anger, for example. Even introducing your kids to the feelings wheel, because sometimes it's hard to actually know how you're feeling or put it into words. But that can be a really helpful way, regardless of age. I still use a feelings wheel to help learn how to express yourself because we're often not taught the language. And when it's not normalized, it can be really tricky. I also really like the movie Inside Out. There's one and two, and Inside Out 2 does a pretty good job reflecting the changes you go through, especially during puberty when it comes to emotions. They introduce anxiety and disgust, embarrassment, and I'm sure there's another one,
There's
but
boredom or ennui.
oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was I was trying to think of the ones from the second one, Inside Out 2. But yeah, the first movie, there's happiness, anger,
Anger.
fear, sadness is adorable. I love her.
Yeah.
Uh, and then there's what else? Disgust. And then in the second movie, they introduce anxiety, hilarious character. And then I think I already mentioned them, but more so the ones that are more prevalent during that puberty time, like, puberty's happening. And it was created by therapists that specialize in internal family systems, which is a type of therapy I'm very interested in, but it's very much related to parts work, and it's very validating for helping people understand the function of emotions and how they try to help you, even though it can, of course, have a trade-off effect depending on the emotion. Of course, anxiety tries to protect you, but it doesn't feel great to have a panic attack. So that kind of thing. And it is an age-appropriate movie, but it does a really good job normalizing, and it's funny. And I talk about this all the time, but when you're laughing and learning, you're more likely to store it in your long-term memory, which is why I add so much humor to my content. But that would be a good, safe movie to watch for pretty much any age range. It's a Pixar movie, so they do a pretty good job keeping it appropriate. But
Awesome. Great resource.
mhm.
Cool. So we have helping kids learn about puberty, talk about some of those changes, both of their own bodies, other bodies. We have some of the products to get to support kids' physical changes. And then you could also get some products for emotional changes. Like, I don't know, if you have a lot of money, get a trampoline so your kid can jump it out, jump their feelings out or something. Or you can get them a new pillow to punch or something like that.
I
So
was
it's
just
fun.
talking about this with a client recently. It could be helpful to learn emotion regulation skills for yourself and then do that with your kids. So, for example,
Nice.
like visualization types of things, like when you have a negative thought, imagine throwing it out of your head, or you can even do a practice of like writing down the negative thoughts and like tearing them up or burning them with your kid. That kind of thing can be really helpful to teach to a young child, especially and when they get to the age of, I would say, about even like 8 years old, depending on their developmental level. It could be really, really helpful to just teach them, this is how I regulate my emotions. You want to do it together. Could be a really nice way to bond.
Yeah, and oftentimes at schools, like there's a school counselor or something like that, or you can even ask your kid's teacher, what are the different techniques that you're teaching in class so you can reiterate those at home? Because I've noticed a lot more emphasis on like breathing exercises and like emotional communication skills that kids are
Yeah.
learning in school.
Mindfulness, very
Yeah.
important. Hmm.
Awesome. Okay, so if you have not talked with your child about what sex is, if you've not talked with them about genital function and anatomy, still relevant at these ages for them to know these things. And one great way to check in on what your child knows already is to be like, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and draw a picture of genitals, and I would like you to tell me what the different parts are called and what they do. And if they're like, oh my God, I have no idea, this is either too embarrassing for me, or I truly have no clue, or like I think this is a vagina or I think this is a penis, I'm not sure. It's a great way to just like break the ice and be like, okay, cool. Like if you're not feeling comfortable talking about these, that makes sense. We haven't talked about that a lot. And also like let me just share some information just a little bit now and then we'll share more information later and you can like end up labeling the pictures
Yeah.
yourself.
I have a funny thing to say real quick.
Oh yeah,
When
go
I was
ahead.
in middle school, it's kind of funny because I'm a sex therapist now, but I don't remember what age. I might have been like 12 or 13. For the longest time, I thought it was vagina with a B.
Nice, nice. Yeah.
I was like, oh, vagina. I thought it was vagina. I don't know why, but yeah, it's so funny.
That's very sweet. Okay, so knowledge about bodies, knowledge about body boundaries, also still important to share with your children, even if you've not already shared it with them if they're a little older.
Hmm.
And then a big change for kids in this age range is access to the internet.
Hmm.
And there's like so much we could say about all of the things that can be helpful when giving your child more internet access. This could be in your own home, if they go to a friend's house, at school, when their grandparents come over to take care of them. Internet access is one of those things that is just tricky and a mess, and I hope it gets better as time goes on. We will see. But currently, if a child has internet access, it is important to talk with them about all the things online that are not made for kids to see and what to do if your kid sees something online that is made for grown-ups. This conversation is going to sound different with an 8-year-old versus a 12-year-old. But it's still important, like, as we give them more access through, like, they're going to do homework on the computer, or we're going to start to remove some parental controls as they get to be in their teenage ages. It's just important to say, you can say very simply for young kids, hey, the internet's something that's really cool. We can enjoy ourselves through like watching a movie. We can entertain ourselves by watching like TikToks or Instagram. It's really cool for connecting people, so you can talk with your grandma who's so far away. or you can meet people that you otherwise would never meet online. It's awesome, all these things. And there's also some parts of the internet that are not great. And one of those things is information based, and one of those things is connections and social based. So, as far as information goes, there's some stuff online that is not designed for kids to see. It's not designed for kids to engage with, but unfortunately, some kids come across it. Some of that content can be violent, like it could be images or videos of people doing violent things to each other, and some of it can be sexual and depict pictures or videos of people who are naked and who are having sex. If you ever come across either of those things, I would please ask you to turn off the device or close out of the window, because it can be really tricky to see something like that and then try to make sense of it afterwards. And I just want you to be seeing things that are appropriate and made for kids your age. If you do ever see anything that scares you or makes you feel really confused or worried online, please just come talk with me about it. You're not going to be in trouble for having seen it. It's really hard to avoid this kind of thing online, so I'm not going to like place any blame on you, but I do want to be there for you if you want to chat through anything that you've seen. So that can be
Yeah.
one way to address all
Hmm.
the misinformation and totally not appropriate for kids content online in a very short and simple way. There's a lot more to say about all the nuance and detail as far as like adult sexual material that's online, but that's like our first little glimpse into a conversation like that. And then another thing for the kids in this age range is there's a lot of trust of people that they don't know. So it's really common to hear stories about like, oh, this kid was like blackmailed by this person they met online because they thought that since they had been talking for so long, that they could trust this
Uh-huh.
person or that they knew this person or this person had their best intentions in mind. Um,
Right.
when in reality, we don't really know who we're talking to online. There are different ways we can try to verify who we are talking to, but there's a really amazing resource called My First Phone. Pretty sure it's by Catherine Pearlman. And it is a book that follows some characters, some like young kids. I don't remember. I think they're probably like 11 or 12. And it follows them learning about all the different ways to use phones, and some like ways to use them and some ways to not use them. So I'd recommend if you're like, holy moly, how do I talk with my kid about they're getting their first phone or we're handing them the iPad and leaving the room. What you might want to say to them beforehand. This is a great resource for you.
Well,
Um,
that's great because there's
yeah.
so much to talk about when it comes to that, direct supervision, but how much until when, those types of things.
Yes.
And of course,
Yeah.
it's an ongoing conversation, but yeah, I mean, there are a lot of predators out there and it's scary to think about, but it's important to inform because, frontal lobes are far from being developed to the point where people are able to make adolescents are able
Yes.
to make
Yeah.
logical decisions. And of course, there's more likely to trust people without actually getting to know them. And it's actually so scary how intense AI and scammers and hackers are getting in 2025. It's actually blowing my mind. I was just telling you about this before we started speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, like letting people know what to be aware of. And yeah, I have a few things I want to say too when it comes to safety, but I'll let you finish and then maybe I'll
Yeah.
add things.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I only have like one more thing to share. I mean, I have like a million but things to talk about, but like just for
many.
this conversation, is to rely on your peers. So if you do not have other parents in your world and in your life, maybe start to be on the lookout for some other families who are in your child's class, or if you go to a community center, other families there, to just start conversations with them like, hey, how are you managing this whole phone thing? Or like, we saw our kid watching this one video and we didn't really know what to say after. Like, how did you deal with something like that? So many families are struggling when it comes to how to support kids in the online world. And you can be one another's like greatest resources in figuring this out. It's also so important to know there's no perfect way to do this. It can be really easy to want to protect children every single moment of every single day from all these people who don't have their best interests in mind and information that can be scary or unsettling. And there's no way to do that. Like, unfortunately, like unless you're going to like, go to a place that doesn't have any technology, technology's at our fingertips. Kids have friends with phones. Kids go to other people's houses where there's internet access, and you can do your best, and that is good enough. And it's not going to be good enough because we need the communities that we are in to get on board with helping children access the internet without getting all this other access to all this other content. And it's something that we really aren't in a good place with right now. And I hope over time we can get better at. But I just want you to know, just try your best. And you can even tell your kid, like, it's a mess right now. Like, there's stuff on there that is not cool for kids to see. And I'm going to do my best to try to make sure that you don't see it, but it's totally possible you will. And if that happens, like, I am here to talk about whatever you've seen. Or if you don't want to talk with me, let's figure out who else you might talk to, if you don't feel comfortable sharing with me.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think everything you said is very relevant, also very validating for how difficult it is, because you're right, there is no perfect way. However, there are some aspects of that world that we do have somewhat control over. One of them being guiding them and instructing them of the ways that you can keep personal information off of
Yeah,
profiles online, because I think that I've just heard of so many different cases of, whether it's children or teenagers, adolescents unintentionally putting like maybe their full name out there type of thing, and that can be really scary. Making sure to educate them about what information can be shared and what information is not safe to be shared, where they go to school, where they live, where their parents work, anything that can lead them to be found, and especially location
very,
notifications.
yeah, yeah.
That is scary. Snapchat has this thing where you can be found on a map, so you have to make sure it's turned off. Unfortunately, Instagram just unrolled that as well a couple weeks ago. One of my friends thought that my location was public, and I was like, oh my God. And I looked and it wasn't, so I was confused why she said that. But yeah, even Instagram has that now where it's like if you don't know that your location services are turned on, a lot of people could let that slip through the cracks. And you have to make sure that when you have a social media account of any sort, that strangers can't come find you. So, not to fearmonger or anything, just that would be an important thing to talk about for sure. You already kind of touched on this, but any type of people with poor intentions out there, what that might look like, and giving them an idea. And, it's okay to come to me if somebody says something to you on the internet, and also emphasizing that you won't be in trouble.
Yep.
I'll believe you and I'll
Hmm.
listen. I
Yeah.
think is really important too.
Yeah, and that actually makes me think about a great resource. There is an organization called Amaze, Amaze, which we'll link to it below. But amaze.org is an amazing organization that has like so many videos. They're all short, all animated, all designed for kids to watch. Usually they're really funny. I usually laugh at them. My students usually laugh at them. Um, and there are a couple of videos about internet safety. So if you would like to sort of supplement your conversations, they even have one on something called sextortion, which is where somebody sends a naked image or a video of themselves naked, and then that image is used as a form of blackmail to have that person pay money or send more pictures or something like that.
Wow.
And that can just like be a short, simple way to get your kids information about these things. Well, it's a serious topic, but watching it in this like short animated video feels more digestible than sometimes just like talking about it. And they like have many videos about internet safety. They talk about bullying and things like that. And that was one of other thing that I was like kind of swirling around for me when you were chatting was just helping kids understand like another digital boundary aside from not sharing full name, not sharing where people go to school, work, live, that kind of thing, is to not share naked images like of anyone. So that would be, like as soon as you hand your child a phone and you walk away, as soon as you hand your child a tablet that has a camera on it and walk away, that's a time to say, hey, remember how we've talked before about how genitals are off limits and that they're private parts of the body? Well, it's also something that's not okay to take pictures of. So I don't know if you've noticed, but we've been really careful to not take pictures of you when you are bathing or when you are getting changed. And that's something that we expect you to do for us as well. Like if I'm ever getting changed or if I'm ever in the bathroom, that's not a time to take a picture or video of anyone. Because when we take a photo of somebody, that photo becomes not private anymore. Even if it's on our own phone, it never leaves our phone. Someone could pick up our phone, scroll through our camera roll and see it. Sometimes photos are uploaded to the cloud or to the internet. And at that point, it can be kind of tricky to figure out exactly where that data or that information is. So helping kids understand it's not okay for anyone to take a picture of yourself naked. It's It's not okay to take pictures of others naked. It's also not okay to share images of other people who are naked. Even if it's a joke, it's not okay. Like you can even ask your kid, like, how do you think someone might feel if their photo was shared without their permission, without somebody asking? Might make someone feel embarrassed, scared, ashamed. There's like serious consequences that can happen, both empathetic wise, like they might feel bad, but also there can be serious like legal consequences, or somebody can get trouble at school if those photos are shared. So it's another dimension of the internet to mention as well. Not okay to take photos of other people naked, even if they're asleep. And this is like as far as when to have these conversations before handing them a device or when handing them a device. Also before sleepovers or play dates, like, hey, just a reminder at the play date, if there's any tech out, any phones, any like tablets or whatever, just a reminder, please don't take pictures of anybody while they're naked. And if that does happen, just let me know and I can get everybody the help they need to like sort that situation out. And I appreciate you coming to me with that information, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
All right, we're doing the marathon. Okay, I'm gonna share two resources for this age range, and then we can like move on to our last age range.
Great.
So there are so many books about puberty and about sexuality. I'm gonna share these two that do a really great job at covering a ton of topics. They're so big. Okay, so Sex is a Funny Word and You Know Sex are both by Cory Silverberg. They are graphic novels. So they follow the stories of young kids as they learn about body boundaries, about the internet and phone use, about sex, like what it is, about puberty, etc. So that's a book that you could read with your child together. That's a book where you could buy it for your child or rent it from the library, have them read, and then you chat about it later. We definitely want to avoid with all of these books, avoid the thing where a parent or caregiver buys it, puts it on the shelf, doesn't say anything ever again about the book. The goal is that this is a conversation starter and that we're opening the door to communication. So if your child reads it on their own, totally cool. But it's important also to chat with them. What was new? What did you learn? What was your favorite chapter? That kind of thing. And then I feel like many parents know about this resource, but I just want to shout it out in case someone doesn't. It's called Common Sense Media, and it is an organization that reviews apps and movies and TV shows, and just like all things digital. Like they review sort of how to talk with kids about ChatGPT, about AI companions. They're kind of helping parents on the edge of new technology, trying to understand how do I talk with my kid about this? Is this something that I should give my child access to? If so, when? What conversations do we need to have beforehand? They're an amazing resource for all things digital when it comes to talking with young kids and tweens and teens. Yeah.
Mhm. Awesome.
Okay. Are we ready for the last one?
Yes.
We can do this. Okay, so if you have a child who is age 13 or older, they're in their teenager years, they probably have gone through many, if not all, of the puberty changes. They're probably online a lot, both for school and for social and entertainment purposes. They probably know more than you about tech, unless this is like your work. Um, I think it's funny, a lot of times when we chat about these topics, parents think they have to be the all-knowers, the knowers of everything, and it's totally actually fine to not know everything and to ask questions of your children and to see them as the holders of knowledge and authorities on certain subjects. That's totally fine and reasonable. Okay,
Mhm.
so if you're sitting here and you're like, my kid, I like really haven't talked with them much about this. I know I need to. I keep hearing them talk with their peers about it, or I've been hearing some like things that are like worrying or concerning me that have happened at their school or something like that. It is really important to recognize your child has already learned a lot about these topics. They've already learned to have a relationship with you of silence around these topics. So if we're all of a sudden wanting to change that, it's important to be intentional about how to do that. So if you would like to support your child as they make decisions around sexuality, as they make decisions online, it's important to acknowledge, hey, I haven't said a ton so far. And I would like to talk with you now. I'd like to support you now. And this is kind of how I would go about a conversation like that. Hey, I was recently reminded how important it is for parents to help their kids learn about sexuality and about life online. And I feel like I really haven't done a great job at doing that, or I feel like I haven't said enough. And I just want to apologize. You deserved that information back when you were in elementary and middle school. You deserve that information now, and I'm really sorry, that I haven't said anything so far. Um, do you have any questions for me, or do you have anything you want to say before I share a little bit more? So, when kids are older, it is more important to spend time asking questions and spend time and intention like listening to what they have to say. A lot of times when parents or caregivers ask me questions when they have teenagers, the question is typically, my child will not talk with me. I would like to talk with them. I've tried, but my child just shuts it down. Or my child's really, really, really uncomfortable, and I feel like they're like literally not, none of the information is sinking in, and I'm just talking at them, and they're like kind of spaced out. And I just want to say that kind of reaction can come up for many reasons. And one of the reasons might be they just aren't from like they don't have any experience, any practice having a conversation like that with you. And it can feel really uncomfortable and like frustrating to be in a place like that. But I have a couple of tips to possibly make it a little bit easier. One of them is to literally set a timer, like on your phone. They say, I know it's uncomfortable. I hear you don't want to talk about this. It's really important that I share this information with you. So I'm going to go ahead and set a timer for 2 minutes. When the timer is up, I will stop. Even if it's mid-sentence, I'm going to stop talking. And then in a week or 2 weeks, I'm going to talk with you again for another 2 minutes, and that's all it's going to be, just 2 minutes. And you can survive these 2 minutes. So that's one way to sort of have them see they can survive 2 minutes, and also give them a boundary so they know things are going to end, the conversation is going to end in 2 minutes. Another one is to give them choice around how they learn. So you could say, I hear you don't want to talk about these topics. That makes a lot of sense. We don't have a lot of experience talking about them together. Would you like to talk later today, or do you want to talk on the weekend? Or do you want to watch this video on your own or read this book on your own and then talk with me? Or do you want to read or watch a video together or read this book together? Like giving them some agency over how they absorb the information, or when that you're talking with them can help bring a little bit of sense of like, I don't know, comfort to the conversation instead of having it be all directed by you or by another person. And then lastly, it is also possible that you might not be the best source of support or information for your kid. And I know a lot of parents want to be that. And as kids grow up into teenagers, their sources of support do change. There's more of an emphasis on sources of connection and support and camaraderie with their peers, more so than their parents or more so than the grown-ups in their lives. So you can chat with them and just say like, hey, it seems like you're not wanting to talk with me about these topics, and we've tried this way, we've tried that way. It seems like it's not really working very well. Like, can you help me come up with another grown-up that you could talk to about these topics? So that way I know you're getting the information that you need, and it can be in a way that feels more comfortable for you. So let's think about somebody. Like, how do you feel about this person? How do you feel about that person? Would you like me to sign you up for a class instead where you can learn with your peers and I'm not there? That can be one way to get the information to kids who are really resistant to learning from a specific grown-up. So that was a lot. But when we start coming to this conversation at a little bit older ages, there can be way more complications. And this is why I always encourage parents to start in the really young years when there is a lot less baggage and a lot less misinformation, and you can just more easily share this information with your kids. Okay. So, when kids are this age, when we're in the teen years, I'm just going to share two main, oh man, there's literally so much to share with them, but I guess maybe three main ideas with you about this age range. So the first one is, this is where you start to help to connect your child with other sources of information. So you are their continued source of support, you are their continued source of information. They can come to you with any questions that they have or concerns. But this is when they start to kind of teeter into the like, and now I'm going and seeking resources and information out on my own. So you can start to say things like, hey, Sexual health is something that's really important as kids start to grow from tweens into their teenage years. I don't know how many of your peers are having sex. I'm not sure when you're interested in having sex with other people, but if that's something that you choose to do, sexual health is a really important part of that decision and also an important part of that responsibility if you're going to be engaging in sex and sexual behaviors. So I'd like to connect you with this clinic that is in our community, or I'd like to connect you with this sexual health resource that's online. So that way you can access information because I might not know everything there is to know about sex and sexuality. And I really do want you to be able to access that information. So we'll list a couple of amazing resources in the description about really cool organizations that are helping teens access this information.
Yeah, like On the Awk is a good one.
Yeah, Own the Awk, Planned Parenthood has like so many sources
Mhm.
of information. Scarleteen is another one. They
Yeah.
have live anonymous chats where teens can ask questions with like trained educators. They also have like tons and tons of articles they've written. Anyway, great resources exist online. Another one that's important to talk with teens about is pornography. A lot of teens, so over three-fourths of teens by the age of 18 have seen some form of pornography. That could be on accident, on purpose, one time, daily. Like this is just the reality is kids are coming across this stuff online. So it's important to just acknowledge a couple of like safety things and consent things when it comes to pornography. So, you might ask your kid after you've like already had a couple of conversations about sexuality and say, hey, like one big difference between what it was like for me to grow up versus what it was like is like for you to grow up is the prevalence of pornography. It's everywhere. I know that like statistically you and your peers have seen it. You might not have seen it, but like statistically there are people in your grade who have seen it. And I just want to see if you had any questions about it or if you have any thoughts about it. And then you can just leave the conversation open. They might share something, they might not. You could say, okay, it's totally understandable that you don't want to share anything about it. Like I totally get it, but there's a couple of messages that I want to share with you about it. I want you to know, number one, it is not a form of education. That's not why it was created. You totally can learn things from watching pornography. Like, I won't deny that. But there's a ton of things that will not be shown in pornography. Do you have any ideas what some of those things might be that they're never going to show? And then if they say something, sure. If not, you can keep going. And you can say one thing they're not going to show is a negotiation conversation. Like, what are the types of sexual behaviors we're okay with? Or what types of birth control is this person on if we're going to engage in a type of sex that could lead to a pregnancy? Or when was the last time you were tested for sexually transmitted infections? Or what medications are you on to prevent the spread of a specific sexually transmitted infection? What type of barriers are we going to use? All of these things are typically negotiated before a scene is filmed. And unfortunately, that part of the education is just not going to be available in pornography.
Yeah.
Another big, or I don't know if you want to say anything about that before I move on.
Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely, yeah, you're covering really important, yeah, aspects of it. Yeah, it's not an accurate representation of reality. As we know, I talk about this on my social media quite a bit. A lot of the bodies are not representative of, what humans look like all the time. A lot of men have very serious body image issues, or, people with penises, I should say, about how a penis is supposed to look because they tend to have a larger penis in the industry. And same thing with women with vulvas or people with vulvas. They often have like a very specific look. Some people will get labiaplasties to make it look a certain way, to have more of like an innie look. So that can be an important thing to talk about too. This is not an accurate representation of reality when it comes to how bodies look, and most of the mainstream porn is pretty unrealistic. A lot of things that are going to be acting rather than actual representations of pleasure. So it's more entertainment. It could be helpful for fantasy, and it's not bad, like you'll see a lot of people say on the internet. However, it can be used as a tool, but it's important to educate yourself about the real versus fiction aspect of it.
Totally, yeah. And like you can even make the comparison of like it's kind of like a Spider-Man movie in that like there's a lighting person, there's a makeup person, there's a person who's editing the sounds. Like this is not something that's just like straight filmed and then, uploaded to the internet. Or if it is, there are things that they are not including, like conversations about boundaries and conversations about sexual health. Like I was gonna say protocol, but like I guess steps or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
Another thing to mention regarding sexual media online is there's a lot of young people who are both choking and also being choked without conversations beforehand. And like there has been quite a lot of discourse, I think it was like, I don't know, a year or two ago, maybe like 2023, 2024, where there's this big like, oh my God, what do we say about choking? Like, there's a really cool resource that you can share with your teen. It's called In the Know, and they are based in New Zealand. And they interview, there's a couple of different videos where there are teens talking about rough sex and choking, and then there's a nurse who talks about physiologically like what is happening when someone is being choked. That can be a really useful way for your young person to like wrap their head around like, if I'm going to do this to someone, here is what is literally happening to their body, or if this is done to me, this is what's happening to my body. Um, but a lot of the teams that I work with are really great at recognizing, like, oh, this is not a realistic depiction of sex, and yet go on to engage in rough sex or engage in choking without talking about it beforehand. So even if your teen is like, oh, I know, like, rough sex is like not, something everybody's into, or I already know that, like, choking is in fact pretty risky and pretty dangerous to the point that it's been banned from certain like adult sexual communities. But even if your teen is able to like identify, I understand this is wrong, their behavior can be different. So helping them recognize that, like, hey, like I just want to share rough sex and choking is something that's pretty prevalent in pornography. Like, do you have any idea why? Like, that might be the case. Like, why are there so many videos about it? One of the reasons is that content that is startling or content that like disturbs us or makes us afraid can make us want to click more or stay more and watch more. And pornography is like a part of the economy, just like most other things, and is shaped by the forces of who is going to watch a certain ad or who is going to be motivated to buy this product. And so part of the reason why we're seeing this type of content is because it does capture people's attention. It's really good at capturing people's attention. It doesn't necessarily reflect actual real desires that people have. It could, but it doesn't necessarily reflect every single person's specific interests or desires. So it's really important before having sex with someone to talk about like what are some of the things that that person wants to try? What are some things that that person absolutely is off the table, does not want to try now or ever? Like it could change over time, but it's really important to communicate beforehand. And this doesn't mean just communicating in text. Like, yes, you can totally communicate in a text what somebody wants to do sexually versus not. But in the moment, someone can feel a lot different than what they have been comfortable communicating in a text message.
That Jack Harlow song that came out, I
Oh
think
yeah.
last year. I don't know if you know what I'm talking
Yeah, I
about.
do. What is it called? Oh, Lovin' on Me?
Yeah, he talks
Yeah.
about whips and chains and choking, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to start making videos about this because I bet you because it's so viral, people are gonna start participating in it without the education, not knowing that it can be very dangerous. So it's important to
Yeah.
talk about.
When I say, yeah, I guess I'll share a resource regarding this and then I'll mention like a little bit more about choking. If you
Yeah.
want to learn more about like what rough sex is and like how some young people, how it's been like either affecting their behavior or just like what are some of the behaviors that people are seeing in like research when it comes to young people and their sexual practices. A really great resource, really good book is Yes, Your Kid by Debbie Herbenek. I I'm not sure it's an audiobook, but I know it's in a book form. And she
Mhm.
goes into different sexual kind of trends that people are seeing, in particular like young adults. And there is a section on rough sex and pornography and choking. So one of the issues with choking, there's like several issues. One of the issues is that it can put people in like a fight, flight, or freeze or fawn mode, because it can feel very threatening to someone's safety, like even if they've talked about it beforehand. And so consent can become a really, really challenging thing to navigate. Like, oh, this person asked me to choke them, but once I did choke them, it's really difficult to know. Are they going along with it because they're fawning or because they're frozen, or is it truly something that they're wanting? The issue with choking, though, the main issue, is just the cutoff of oxygen to the brain. So choking is when somebody puts their hand on someone else's throat or their neck. There are some arteries on the side that bring blood up into the brain, and when we restrict we put pressure on them, we restrict the movement of blood up into the brain. So then we are denying the brain of oxygen, which turns out is not great. Brains need oxygen to function. So there can be some like short-term side effects that can be seen like as someone is experiencing it, and there can also be some longer-term side effects, which can include like headaches, like changes in like vision. There can be like bruising, like people can faint. Like there's all sorts of different types of possible consequences from this behavior. So you can say to your teen, you just be like, hey, like choking has been popular in the past. As like online people talk about it a lot. Sometimes people glorify it, glorify rough sex itself. You don't have to engage in it. Like you really don't have to choke other people, and you also don't have to stand for that behavior being put upon you. If you're ever in a situation and somebody starts to engage in rough sex without talking to you, or if somebody starts to choke with you without your permission, here's like, what do you think you could do? Like, let's come up with some ideas about what someone might do in a situation like that. And it's also okay to say before a sexual experience, I'm not into choking. Please don't ask me to do it. I'm not into choking. Please don't do it to me. I'm into this, and this, or I'm open to trying X, Y, or Z.
Mhm.
Yeah. And also, I just want to acknowledge like, this is hard to talk about. Oh my God, it's so hard, especially if you are not familiar with talking with your child about these topics already. It is so, so difficult. So I just want to like acknowledge we are asking you to do something really difficult. And if you're feeling like it's too intimidating and it's too much, you are welcome to send them a link and be like, here's a link to a video about choking. I don't feel comfortable talking about it. I'm really sorry. I wish I did. Or like, this is something that's really important and I don't have a lot of experience talking about, but like, let's watch this video together and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. It's really okay to let them know your like lack of experience talking about these things, because most adults are not talking about these topics every day, all
Right,
day. Yeah.
right. Why this is why we do what we do, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, with teens, it is a lot about connecting them with other sources of information, both online and in person, and then also addressing one of the current phenomena that's been showing up in a lot of young people's sexual experiences is just the occurrence of rough sex without agreements around boundaries, and safety beforehand.
Covered a lot.
We did. I feel like it's a good place to stop. I feel like the only other
Yeah,
thing I wanted to share was one more book resource and sort of like how people can follow up after if they have more questions.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so of all the things that I shared today, I think one of your greatest sources of like support and navigation through all these conversations is like a very, very small book, but powerful book called Sex Positive Talks to Have with Kids. It's by Melissa Pinthor Carnegie. And Melissa runs Sex Positive Families, which is also another great source of support. They have so, so, so many resources in their little resource bank. And they're the ones doing the live puberty classes I mentioned earlier, live and pre-recorded. But in this book, they cover different types of topics like body awareness, consent and safety, how to start the talks at different age ranges, like super young, middle years, later years. So this is a great resource. If you would like to like ask any follow-up questions, my website is livingearthsexed.com, and I have a little contact form on there if you're welcome to ask a question. I also run live online classes for parents and go through these different age ranges, and we like practice for these conversations in class. And I also sell digital workbooks. So like if you want to know what are all the topics that my kids should be knowing and talking with me about in these age ranges, you're welcome to access those there. And I also do private consultations. So if you're like, holy moly, Claire, this thing is coming up and I have no idea how to address it. I need someone in my corner. I need a source of support. You're welcome to book. I do like half hour and hour long sessions online. So that's
Yeah,
available as
not
well.
anywhere in the world, right?
Yep.
Anywhere
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've had some people from Europe. Yeah. Which has been really interesting and fun to work with them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. A lot of
Yeah.
great information. Thank you so much.
That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that was
Marathon.
yeah, one thing I will say before I wrap up, which is something
Yeah.
I mentioned to you beforehand, is we've already covered why this is so important, but just overall, what the research shows is that
Right.
in countries and communities that have these transparent conversations about sex early on with kids, children, adolescents, tend to have better outcomes when it comes to less risky behaviors, whether that's STI, early pregnancy, et cetera, impulsivity. And America doesn't do the best job with that, as you may know, which is why we're providing resources like this. And when you look at research between kids and adolescents in America versus other places that are more open, I could put resources below about what the research looks like. It's a crazy difference. It's so important to keep in mind clinically, but also like on a human level. And I forget who said this, but I believe in America, one of the best analogies I've heard when it comes to the sex education. Of course, we've all seen the Mean Girls clip where it's like, don't have sex or you'll die and blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah, and then you'll die. Is a lot of the time they take an approach of it's like when you're teaching somebody to drive a car, but then you only teach them about accidents. You don't
Right.
teach them how to drive safely, how to enjoy the ride. You're only teaching someone how to drive a car, but based on what could go wrong, which is definitely not comprehensive. And I think it's a perfect analogy because, like, how are you supposed to know how to drive a car? Sex is the reason that we're here. It's a great bonding opportunity. The pleasure aspect is really important psychologically. My dissertation,
Distressing. Yeah.
right. I talk about that all the time, the benefits of masturbation and everything like that. So yeah, it's just important to talk about my dissertation was on the importance of talking about sex. So I'm glad that we're talking about it in this context because that was more so the importance of talking about it with clients. But
Mm.
this is a really important topic that, like I said, a lot of my clients have asked me about. So I'm excited to have this video and I can point them in this
Yay.
direction and then they
Yeah.
can timestamp that's relevant because I know it's pretty
Right.
long, just
Yeah.
to kind of narrow down the resources that would be the most helpful for them.
Yeah. And my last thing I'll say is like, good job. Good job for being here and trying your best to learn more information. Good job on getting some books. Good job on sending links to your kids. Good job on making an effort and trying. As Dr. Sonia said, we have kind of an uphill battle in the United States in that it's not necessarily, we can't rely on amazing education experiences in schools. And so some of that responsibility falls on parents and caregivers. But you're going to see a giant list of resources below that are here to support you in your efforts. But I just want to say an overall good job. Keep it up. Literally, any effort you can put towards this is going to have positive effects on not only sharing information with your kid and your kid having knowledge, but on improving that communication and that bond and relationship you have with them. Because all we're doing is supporting them as they make sense of the world around them. If you are not there sharing information, other sources of information become what they have to rely on. And the relationship that you have is really, really important as they make decisions around these topics, as they make mistakes, and as they experience the joys that can come from learning about sexuality and eventually having sexual experiences on one's own or with others. So,
Yeah,
good
and
job
make
for your efforts.
yeah, kind to yourself for sure because it's
Yes,
not easy. You already said.
absolutely not. Yeah. Mhm.
Mhm.
Cool.
Well,
Okay.
thank you
Well,
so
take
much.
care, everyone, and feel free to reach
Yeah.
out.
Well, where can people find you besides? I know we'll put the link below for
Yeah.
your course and everything and coaching, I
Yeah.
believe you said.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on social media at Living Earth Sex Ed. Yeah. And then livingearthsexed.com. And we'll put that below.
Yeah. And as I
Okay.
said before, I'm Dr. Sonia Maya. I'm on Instagram and I'll put all of the links below as well. I'm on TikTok, Facebook Reels, and YouTube, obviously, because you're seeing me on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
So
Sonia's everywhere.
I have, yeah, a lot of platforms.
You do so good at that. Good job.
Doing my best, trying to get the word
Yeah.
out there on these things.
Totally.
But yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for this.
We did it. Yay.
I learned a lot. We did it.
Awesome.
Yes.
Take
Great.
care.
Well, yeah, everyone make pleasurable decisions and decisions because you deserve it. And yeah, thanks again so much. This was fun.